The movement of Guild Wars 2 is one of my favorite things about the game, and the wide variety of different jumping puzzles around the open world of the game are some of my favorite activities that an adventurer of Tyria can partake in. There are so many different jumping puzzles, ranging from short ones to get to a vista, fully fledged puzzles in secret areas, festival activities, and more. In this video, I'm going to talk about which jumping puzzles are my favorite, and I'm going to focus on the ones that are fully fledged puzzles that you can find in the open world and you can earn an achievement for doing. We're not going to be talking about anything to do with festivals or any part of the world where there are a few jumps strewn together that can be considered jumping puzzles. We're going to be talking about the big ones. So let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is Wind Through the Walls. This is one of the 2 jumping puzzles introduced to the game in the End of Dragons expansion. Located in the northeastern ruins of New Kaining City, this jumping puzzle will take you on an adventure across the dilapidated ruins of Old Kaining. This jumping puzzle is pretty easy to do, decently straightforward on where you need to go, and incorporates some traps that you need to be aware of throughout the puzzle. My favorite part of this whole puzzle is just the environment you are in. Running around this area is beautiful and also pretty unique. There aren't any other parts of Old Kaining that you can visit in the End of Dragons expansion, so this and the surrounding area is it. I think it's especially cool because of how cool of a place Kaining City is in the original Guild Wars, and now you get to jump across it in the second game, something you couldn't do in the first. Of course, it's all ruins now, but still, this itself is cool in its own right. Speaking of the original Guild Wars, when you reach the end of the puzzle, you find the ghost Nika, an assassin from the original Guild Wars who helped you take down Shiro Tagachi, the main villain of the Factions expansion. She is a descendant of Vizu, an assassin who also took down Shiro Tagachi a couple hundred years prior to the first game. But getting to see a character from the original Guild Wars is a great finale to a beautiful area and decently fun jumping puzzle. Coming in at number 9 is the Obsidian Sanctum. This jumping puzzle is huge and, depending on how good you are at multiple areas of the game, one of the most challenging. This one is technically not part of any open world map, but it is part of the jumping puzzles achievement category, and I think it does count for what we are going for in this list. Not only does this jumping puzzle feature many different rooms and a lengthy adventure to get to the end, it is located in World vs. World as its own unique map, separate from all the other maps. And because it is in World vs. World, that means this jumping puzzle features PvP. Whereas you're trying to make all the different jumps and get through the puzzle, you could be attacked by a player on either of the opposing teams at any time. Where an additional super cool part of this puzzle is that there are actually different consoles all around the map that players can interact with to set off traps earlier in the puzzle in order to try to knock players off of the puzzle. For a lot of people in this game that hate PvP, this jumping puzzle is an absolute nightmare for them, but as someone who does enjoy PvP a decent amount and also enjoys a sandbox environment where you have to jump around to get to different places while interacting with the traps and other players, this jumping puzzle is super fun. It is definitely one of the most unique experiences of Guild Wars 2, and I've had a decent amount of fun, especially back during vanilla, with playing in this jumping puzzle and having huge 3-way battles as people try to get to the end of the puzzle. Coming in at number 8 is Troll's Revenge. This is a massive jumping puzzle that spans most of the city of Lion's Arch. It was introduced to the game back in 2015 when Lion's Arch was rebuilt, and it actually replaced an old jumping puzzle called Troll's End, which was not super popular in the community. This jumping puzzle is decently difficult to do, but most of the difficulty comes from finding what route you need to take and how long this jumping puzzle is. It starts at the Captain Theo Ashford Memorial Bridge and snakes its way around the northwestern parts of Lion's Arch, all the way to the cliffs overlooking the western ward. You're jumping across houses, giant structures, and massive caves, while finding 4 different parts of a key you need to combine in order to open the chest at the end. This jumping puzzle really feels like it is parkour in the stereotypical sense, where you're running along the tops of buildings and making your own way through the city. I have a lot of good memories with this jumping puzzle when it was originally released because of how everyone was working together to get through it together. Nowadays, it is a little sad because you can pretty much just cheat and use your mountain glider to get through the puzzle, but I had a fun experience with it recently on my Let's Play account where I did not have a glider and I didn't use my raptor. Had not done this puzzle in multiple years and worked my way through the puzzle again, trying to remember where I needed to go to progress through it. And the number 7 spot is Fawcett's Bounty. This is a super fun jumping puzzle located in the northern end of the Harathi hinterlands. There's actually a lot more to this jumping puzzle than just jumping, as it is kind of a mini dungeon where they incorporate other puzzle elements as well. The first room has multiple pressure plates that you need to place boulders on. This then leads to a room where most of the floor breaks and you need to take the right path to get across, which then leads to a room that is kind of like a maze with a bunch of spike traps that you need to get past. and once you get past that room, you enter the final area, which is definitely the coolest, and it's where the jumping puzzle truly begins. You break out into a giant hidden cave, and in the center of it is Captain Fawcett's ship. You have to make your way onto the ship, defeat the ghost of Captain Fawcett, and then you can claim the final chest. This puzzle and jumping puzzle is just super cool. All the different rooms and puzzles that you have to do to get to this area is fun, and then the final area itself is just so beautiful. I love the cave with the ship in the center. Overall, everything about this puzzle just makes it a fun adventure and is why it is on this list. Coming in at number 6 is a 2-for-1, and that is Morgan's Leap and Dark Reverie. There are multiple jumping puzzles in the game where you have to complete one jumping puzzle in order to start a second one, and these two located in Caledon Forest is my favorite of those types of puzzles. You first start with Morgan's Leap, which is located in the starting area for the Savari and has a bunch of different map objectives around it. You have to climb this awesome Savari tower that has a bunch of floating and moving rocks, and you have to make your way all the way up and then over to the cliffside. Completing this first puzzle will net you a chest and an achievement, but then you can make your way over to the second puzzle titled Dark Reverie. While Morgan's Leap is decently easy, Dark Reverie bumps up the challenge a good amount. There are a ton of nightmare cord in this area that you have to deal with while you try to complete the jumping puzzle, and the jumps themselves are quite a bit harder compared to the first puzzle. But if you are able to climb your way out while avoiding all the things you have to fight, you break free into the cliffside and can get your chest and your achievement. This location is super nostalgic for me, mostly because of how much time I spend in both Caledon Forest and doing jumping puzzles. The open world has always been the thing I spent the most time doing in Guild Wars 2, and back in like 2013, jumping puzzles were the main thing that I spent time doing. Most people, even those who enjoy jumping puzzles, typically do them for the first time that they need to for the achievement, and then whenever they have to again for various collections. But for me, I like to just come and do the various jumping puzzles every now and then. But back in 2013, I did a few of the jumping puzzles every few days. These two were definitely on my rotation, as I also spent a lot of time just hanging out in Caledon Forest because I love this area. I still remember my first time completing Dark Reverie because I failed so many times, where if you died, you'd have to go to Morgan's Leap again just to get another shot at Dark Reverie. Coming in at number 5 is Skip Up the Volcano, also known as the Chalice of Tears. Saying that name probably caused a visceral reaction in some of the people watching this video because of how painful this jumping puzzle is. And well, that's the biggest reason it's on this list. This jumping puzzle is pretty long, and it's also one of the most difficult to complete. A lot of people consider it the single most difficult jumping puzzle in the game because of how many technical jumps there are, how dangerous this place is, and how you can't really skip the jumping puzzle. With many of the older jumping puzzles, such as Dark Reverie, you can skip right to the end chest by using masteries, but with Chalice of Tears, you have to reach multiple checkpoints in order to complete the puzzle, which has brought forth a few players who dedicate a lot of their time to helping people complete this jumping puzzle, where people have multiple mesmers parked around this jumping puzzle that they use in order to teleport groups of players around the puzzle to the various checkpoints, and then to the end, which is super great for people who are bad at jumping puzzles and want to grab something they need for a collection. I have definitely utilized this a couple times just to grab some stuff in the puzzle. But one of my favorite memories of Guild Wars 2 was when this puzzle originally released back in 2016. Both a guild friend who I still play with and myself both love jumping puzzles, and we discovered this difficult jumping puzzle in Ember Bay that people were trying to figure out, and well, we took a stab at it. To skip to the end of the story, we made it to the end and got our chest, but it took us about 5 to 6 hours of brute force, experiments, talking with other people, and many deaths in order to make it to the end. It's one of those things where it's definitely a bit painful and frustrating, but in a good way, where when you finally accomplish such a difficult task, you feel super rewarded. We haven't had a jumping puzzle introduced to the game that has been quite as difficult as this one, and for good reason. Chalice of Tears is a bit infamous in the community because of how many people aren't a big fan of jumping puzzles and how Chalice of Tears is the hardest of them all. But part of me is really hoping that we get another one that is near the same level of technically difficult as Chalice of Tears. And the number 4 spot is Abaddon's Ascent. Right off the bat, you know this jumping puzzle is going to be good because it's named after Abaddon. This area is located on Siren's Landing and is a tall jumping puzzle. The difficulty of this one is pretty easy as none of the jumps are too hard. You unlock checkpoints that you can return to, and you have access to gliding so you can save yourselves in some parts. But it is super fun, incorporates gliding elements into the puzzle, and is very long. You have to climb all the way from the bottom of this massive rock structure in the ocean that has a bunch of old ships and sea life, similar to the aesthetics of the rest of Ore. You jump from crate to pole to urchin to ship, and after a long time you make it all the way up to the top of the jumping puzzle, where you can get your chest and your achievement. There's also a pair of diving goggles up here that allow you to dive all the way back down into the ocean below. I believe these diving goggles require you to fall the furthest distance in the game for any diving goggles. I mean, as far as the entirety of the game goes, this entire rock structure is definitely one of the tallest areas in the entire game. I loved doing this jumping puzzle when it first came out, and it's just super relaxing. It has good vibes, and none of the jumps are too difficult, and it's also long. It's a great puzzle for someone who wants to start jumping and jump for a long time. It does become a little difficult in some parts where you have to figure out where to go or to glide to, but overall it's pretty straightforward. Coming in at number 3 is the Gauntlet of the Conqueror. This is a super fun jumping puzzle located in Grothmar Valley and has several cool things related to it. The entrance to this area is pretty cool and kind of hidden away. But you also have the Vault of the Conqueror, where you can turn in the different keys you get from the metas around Grothmar in order to get some special rewards. But if you decide to push further into the cave, you can break out into an absolutely gorgeous area that involves a super fun jumping puzzle. I just love all of the jumps in this puzzle. They're super fun as you're jumping on lily pads, avoiding frogs blowing water at you, climbing up trees and mushrooms, climbing up old Ascalonian ruins, and so on. It's a phenomenal aesthetic and a combination of a bunch of super fun jumps. You also have to carry a torch with you all the way from the start of the jumping puzzle until the end, lighting up each brazier you come across. And you need to keep the torch lit from each brazier until the next, or else you can't light the brazier. This is kind of like a checkpoint system for the jumping puzzle and an extra element to the jumping puzzle where you can't fall into the water or else your torch goes out. This also allows this area to act as a jumping puzzle where people have to light the braziers but also allow people to explore the area without having to do the jumping puzzle. Because if you aren't interested in jumping puzzles but want to get the vista here, you can just swim through the water and ignore most of the jumps. This is great for people who want to do one thing but not the other. But going back to the puzzle itself, I absolutely loved doing this when it originally released, and it is still one of my favorite jumping puzzles to this day. While this is number 3 on my list and I rank 2 more jumping puzzles higher than this one, this is kind of my golden standard of a jumping puzzle, where I wish every content update for Guild Wars 2 introduced a jumping puzzle into the game, and I wish that most of them were similar to this one: fun, beautiful, and inclusive. And in the number 2 spot is Goemm's Lab. This is one of the more difficult jumping puzzles from the original release of Guild Wars 2 and is one of the most nostalgic for me. Located in Metrica province, this jumping puzzle features a ton of Asura gates and floating islands, where you can actually see the puzzle from the ground of Metrica, and there is even a sign pointing you to look up at it. But you can get to the first Asura gate that has a bonus chest in it, and then you get teleported all the way up to these floating islands. There are 4 unique areas up here. The first 3 of which features a weather element, where you will first have to deal with winds blowing you off of the puzzle, then you will have to deal with lightning dealing damage to you, and then you will have to deal with frosty air slowing you down. This actually causes a situation where people who are more knowledgeable about various elements of the game will have an easier time getting through this puzzle, where you can just deal with the elements attacking you in the puzzle, or you can counteract them by using multiple different skills or boons, like how stability will prevent you from getting knocked back by the wind, or using a condition cleanse will get rid of the chill effect. On top of all of that, there are also different attuner devices that you need to interact with to get attuned to the different Asura gates located at the end of each section. This forces you to go to different parts of the puzzle, typically away from where you need to go to get to the Asura gate, but if you become attuned and then fall, you can skip going back to the attuner device and can just head straight to the gate. Once you make it all the way to the end, there is a pretty easy boss with the Asuran engineer Goemm, and then you can get your final chest and achievement. I loved doing this jumping puzzle for the first time all the way back when I first started playing, and I still love running through it every now and then nowadays. I like to use Goemm's Lab as a bit of a rite of passage for my friends who play this game, where maybe I'll take them to a few of the simpler jumping puzzles like Morgan's Leap that have some easier jumps. But then I'll bring them here to really test them, and I guess in a way, torture them for my amusement. Another huge bonus with this jumping puzzle is back in 2013, the singer-songwriter YouTuber Sharm, who I originally started watching back in like 2009 or sometime, made a parody to Taylor Swift's Trouble that was all about this jumping puzzle. Which, if I'm being a little honest, looking back on when video game parodies were super popular in games like Minecraft and World of Warcraft, is a little cringy to me nowadays. But I loved this video a lot when it came out, and I still enjoy listening to them every now and then. I'll throw a link down in the description if you happen to want to listen to it. And now for the number 1 spot. The jumping puzzle that is my favorite jumping puzzle in the game, and I consider the single greatest jumping puzzle in all of Guild Wars 2, is Retrospective Runaround. This is a massive jumping puzzle located in the Silver Wastes. In order to get to this area, you have to make sure that the bandits have been cleared out from the Skrit camp in the northeastern Silver Wastes. Once that's done, not only will the Skrit tunnels around the map open up, but you unlock a brand new area to explore, and well, that area is basically the size of the entire Silver Wastes. As you head down the stairs, you come out to a giant open area that has a massive ship that the Skrit are building, known as the SS Topsy-Turvy, which this area is super fun in and of itself with the ship, all the Skrit, and the story going on here. But this jumping puzzle, starting at the ship here, basically takes you all around the Silver Wastes. Beneath the entirety of the map that you explore for map completion and the meta is basically an entire second map with large winding caverns that you can make your way through, reaching various checkpoints and eventually making it to the end. There are so many places that you can explore that are only part of this puzzle, a wide variety of different rooms and caves, and super fun areas that again are only part of this jumping puzzle. It is just really cool how Silver Waste is a large zone with so much stuff going on, but it features a giant jumping puzzle that is basically a giant zone itself. And this is probably the largest jumping puzzle in the game with so many different areas and so many jumps, which is definitely why it is my favorite. Nowadays, it suffers from the same fate as other jumping puzzles where you can really just skip a lot of it with masteries, which is sad, but it also opens up a lot of new opportunities for exploration like I featured in my map breakout video, but you do still have to go around and get all the checkpoints and whatnot. There's also a giant scavenger hunt throughout this jumping puzzle that has you collecting 22 of 30 different golden lost badges for an achievement that is similar to the one where you have to collect 30 lost badges plus the other 8 golden lost badges hidden around the Silver Wastes, kind of reinforcing the idea that this jumping puzzle is a whole zone itself. But with the combination of how large this jumping puzzle is, how fun it is to play through, how beautiful all of these areas are, the fun story that is being told in this jumping puzzle, the giant scavenger hunt, and everything else going on with this jumping puzzle, it is definitely my favorite jumping puzzle in the entire game, and it is why it is on the #1 spot on this list. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. Just like with all my top 10 videos, these are mostly my opinions, but I do incorporate other factors into it beyond just my personal taste. I'll throw some honorable mentions down in the description, but if you think a jumping puzzle should have been on this list but wasn't, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. I love hearing all of the other locations and ideas that people share with each of my videos. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.